You know that feeling, right? You catch a whiff of something out of the blue. Maybe it's fresh-cut grass, or an old book, or a perfume someone is wearing, and boom, you are instantly somewhere else, some other time. You're not just remembering, you're feeling it, like you're right back there. It's wild. Okay, let's get into this because your nose is basically a time machine, and we're going to figure out exactly how it works. So, the most famous example of this, ever, comes from literature. The author, Marcel Proust, bites into a little cake dipped in tea, and this whole flood of forgotten childhood memories just comes rushing back. It's so iconic that we now call this a Proustian moment, and honestly, it just perfectly captures the crazy, unique power of our sense of smell. All right, for our first section, we are diving straight into this idea. Your nose is a time machine. We're going to unpack that powerful and surprisingly direct connection between what you smell and your most vivid emotional memories. Now, here's a really interesting thing about how we remember stuff. For most of our life events, our most important memories tend to cluster between the ages of 15 and 30. Scientists even call it the reminiscence bump. But our memories from smells, they just don't play by the same rules. Nope, they almost always come from way, way earlier in our lives. That's right, usually before we're even 10 years old. And that's because when we're kids, our brain is basically a sponge, forming all these major connections for the first time. So when we smell something new, our brain doesn't just log the scent, it kind of zips the scent and whatever emotion we're feeling at that moment together into one single, inseparable memory file. So how in the world does this actually work inside our skulls? Well, that brings us to the really cool neuroscience of it all. In our next section, the brain's direct line. We're going to look at the special wiring that gives our sense of smell its superpower. Okay, so to get why smell is so special, you first have to know how our other senses work. When you see something, or hear something, or touch something, all that information travels to this part of the brain called the thalamus. You can think of the thalamus as like a super busy switchboard operator, a middleman that takes the call, processes the signal, and then forwards it to the right department. But smell is the rebel of the senses. It gets a VIP pass. Odor signals completely bypass that thalamus switchboard. They take a direct, high-speed express lane straight to the brain's centers for emotion and memory. It's this unfiltered, immediate connection, and that's exactly why a smell can feel so much more sudden and powerful than seeing an old photo or hearing a familiar song. So what does this direct line actually look like? Well, the signals shoot from your nose right to something called the olfactory bulb. And here's the key. This structure is physically tangled up with the amygdala, your brain's emotional core, and the hippocampus, which is the memory manager. This super close physical connection is the literal reason that smell, emotion, and memory are so tightly woven together. Now, this powerful system can be a source of incredible joy, right? Nostalgia. But what happens when it gets altered by trauma? This brings us to a really fascinating and pretty complex idea that we're going to call a paradox of smell. And this is the central question a recent study on combat veterans decided to tackle. They really wanted to understand how the intense experiences of combat might actually rewire this incredibly primal and powerful sensory system. So here's the setup. The researchers had three groups of people: combat veterans who had PTSD, veterans who didn't have PTSD, and a control group of healthy civilians. And they had them all fill out this really detailed questionnaire about their emotional reactions, specifically how much distress they felt to 49 different common smells. The first result was kind of what you might expect, but the scale of it is just staggering. When it came to smells related to trauma, things like burning fuel or gunpowder, the veterans with PTSD showed this huge jump in distress, over 93% of them. That's a massive leap compared to the other groups, and it shows a really clear, heightened sensitivity to anything that smells like a threat. Okay, but then they found something totally unexpected. When they looked at other really powerful, unpleasant smells, like garbage, look at what happened. Both groups of veterans actually reported feeling less distressed than the healthy civilians. Their emotional response to these other bad smells was actually blunted, kind of numbed. And this right here is the core paradox. You've got this hypersensitivity to specific smells that signal danger on one hand, and on the other hand, this muted, dialed-down response to almost everything else, even smells most of us would find totally disgusting. So what on earth could be going on here? The researchers have this absolutely fascinating theory, which we're going to explore right now. Survival, not sickness? They're suggesting that maybe this isn't a sign of a broken system at all. Maybe it's a sign of a highly sophisticated adaptation. So the first part of their theory is something called attentional bias. In a life-or-death environment, your brain has to learn to become laser-focused on any cue that might signal danger. For these veterans, smells like fuel and gunpowder became these critical warnings that, for survival, demanded immediate, absolute attention.
The second part is just as brilliant. They call it selective ignoring. See, to avoid getting overwhelmed and to save all that precious mental energy for real threats, the brain also has to learn to tune out the unimportant distractor smells. A bad smell like garbage is, yeah, unpleasant, but in a combat zone, it's not going to kill you, so the brain just learns to ignore it.
So when you put those two things together, the attentional bias toward threat smells and the selective ignoring of distractor smells, what you get is a system that has been perfectly optimized for survival in an incredibly dangerous place. It's a profound rewiring of our most ancient sense. And that really brings us to our big conclusion here. Memory's double-edged scent. We've seen how this one sense can be a direct line to our happiest childhood memories, and at the same time, an anchor for our deepest traumas. And this really gets to the heart of the entire story. That very same biological wiring, that direct, unfiltered superhighway to our brain's emotional center, is what gives a smell the power to bring comfort and the power to bring distress. It is, without a doubt, our most potent and most personal sense. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. What smell is your time machine? What's the one scent that has the power to just stop you in your tracks and send you flying back through your own personal history? The answer says a lot about your past and about the incredible hidden architecture of your own brain.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe button and join our community of bridge builders. Let's keep exploring the weird and wonderful ways our psychology shapes who we are today. See you in the next one.